Hello and welcome. This is the Business Black Temple Tier 6 Strategy Review video. We're going to go through each of the bosses except for Illidan. There'll be a separate Illidan video. I'll leave a link for our main spreadsheet here that we'll be using for all of our assignments, and where you can find all of this information that you see here in this YouTube video description, and then also it is in the tier 6 strats channel. So we're going to go through each boss, cover quickly like abilities, locations, healing. The only thing you'll not get out of this is the tanking specifics. And we're also going to be sneaking in our few keywords. We get a couple people in Discord that are just listening along, adding some comments, and just basic Q&A. So we'll be sneaking in our 3 to 4 keywords there to validate that you've watched this video and understand everything. Alrighty. So first up is Naj'entus. So Naj'entus has his 3 abilities: Needle Spine, Impaling Spine, and Tidal Shield. So you can see here in this picture that once every minute he's going to throw up his Tidal Shield, and then he's going to start healing for about 1% every 2 seconds. He's going to throw out these Impaling Spines that hit a player for 4 to 5k. Essentially we're all just spread out, range 7. Somebody's going to get hit. It's going to look like this. So you can see here this middle picture is somebody getting hit by Needle Spine, which just hits somebody and then does damage to somebody near them. That's why we spread out. And Paling Spine puts his, whatever is on his arm or whatever that looks like, the big shell. It's going to put that on somebody and it's going to stun them. So you actually have to go and right click it. It will go into your inventory, and then you use that item out of your inventory. So typically it's best to have your first bag slot open so that you can be ready to click that. We are going to call for somebody to click it once the raid is topped off, because when it explodes it does about 8,500 damage. Shamans and paladins can use frost resist totem or aura to help with partial resists on that. But here I've got a quick video to show when he throws up his shield and just the expected incoming damage there, what it looks like. The raid pretty much just spreads out behind him. We'll have the healers in this kind of center row here, and then range on the back side. So there's the shield. And then everybody's topped off. We call it should be good. Then you can see everybody takes, 80-90% of their health. And then we top them off again. It looks like he doesn't really do his kind of impaling and needle spine stuff afterwards for a couple seconds, so you have time to top people off. The healing notes here are that somebody can, shield low health players that might go extremely low. And melee are taking a lot of damage here just because of their ability to spread out. Next up is Supremus. So he's got 2 phases. In phase 1, it's just a tank and spank. The two tanks with the highest amount of health are going to be taking hateful strikes, so you need to make sure that they're topped off. The melee can be max melee range to avoid being hit by this, because you can attack Supremus at a range further than he can actually attack you. So really this phase 1 is just a tank and spank. You never want to be further than 40 yards from the boss, because he'll get a movement speed increase. And that matters for phase 2, which is where he'll fixate, kind of like Thaladred does on KT. He'll run really slowly, but he'll fixate on somebody and just follow them and then kind of switch targets every 10 seconds. The best thing to do here is like the outside of his little red circle hitbox is about 20 yards, so it's best to really just stay in like around the edge of that, and everybody should you should kite it in a circle so that everybody else is able to stay within that 40-yard range. Otherwise, if somebody's outside that range, he'll run quickly and he'll just kill that person. And then the volcanoes, they have a huge range, so we got a nice little clip here of Steuben kiting and some volcanoes in the background. So you can see him doing a circle, and you can see on the left side there the volcanoes. So just make sure you're avoiding all the volcanoes and you're not running too far. You're not the whole fixate phase is not so much of a how much damage can you deal during that time. It's more of a just surviving, staying away from the volcanoes, and making sure you don't get too far from the boss. That person will sometimes get knocked back, so just be mindful of where you are, because you can get knocked back onto like just the environment stuff. When we transition from phase 2 to phase 1, there's a threat drop, so we'll call for that. Henry's going to try to use Exorcism. We'll probably have MDs rotated as well. For Shade, we're pretty much just going to we're going to start the fight with one of the trash mobs by running it up into the center platform here. Everybody's pretty much just going to be stacked up on the platform. Anybody who has AoE, like the warlocks, are going to be seeding off this battle lord that we pull in to kill the channelers. And the whole fight is simply just Shade will be kind of locked up until his channelers are killed, and then he'll walk towards Akama and then start attacking him. So we have to just kill the channelers, and then he'll walk over to Akama, and then he'll be attackable, so we just have to kill him before he kills Akama. So really this is just as simple as, if you for some reason are on the outside and get aggro from something, then run it into the middle. And it's going to take him like, a couple seconds to run down to Akama, so there will be these other mobs that run up from the sides that 2 tanks will be picking up. There's some comments in here about kill order for those, but generally we're just going to stack them up and cleave them down in the middle here. And here's just a kind of a little bit after the pull, because you can see some of these channelers are at 50-25% health, but everybody's kind of just up there in the middle. These mobs that run up, we'll be picking them up, just trying to keep them off of people, but they pretty much just like sprint towards Shade. Next boss is Teron Gorefiend. We're going to run down and kind of tank him about a little bit further than where he stands, and the entire raid will run down to in between these 2 braziers. And he'll summon these little purple clouds that will do like 2k shadow bolts on people. Not anything crazy, but then he'll apply a Shadow of Death debuff on somebody that kills them after 55 seconds. So at around the 25 second mark, or 20 seconds, you'll run out to one of these circles here, and you'll just die there. When you die, you'll become a ghost with a pet bar of abilities that you'll use to kill 4 ghosts that spawn and run towards the raid. So you die over here, so you get enough time to be able to kill them before they get to us and kill us. Only the ghosts can do damage, like the player ghosts can do damage to the enemy ghosts. So the order of the abilities that you'll use here are, there's a volley, which by default, if you use main bar, is 5. Spirit change is like a little AoE freeze, and then use the Spirit Lance ability, which deals damage and slows the target, and applies a stacking debuff to reduce their movement speed by up to 90%. So if you guys haven't already, play the game, and here's raid stacked up here, boss is there, melee is there, this timer indicates that I'm gonna die. So then afterwards you would do you would hit 5 first instead of hitting 4 like I did, and then tab through each of these and apply the slowing debuff so they don't get to the raid, and then you can ideally just kill them before they get to the raid, because they'll be super slowed and you'll be able to use all the other abilities. After you kill all of your mobs, unlike I did here, then you'll still have time where you'll be a ghost. By that time, like it's kind of like a rolling thing to where there's always somebody that is has the debuff and is about to die. We should only see 2 or 3 of these, but you'll have time after your ghosts are dead to help the next person. So here is a good view of this enhancement shaman gets the debuff. He already waited until like it's at that like 20 second mark. He runs out to the corner while we're all here. He dies in the corner and summons all of the ghosts. And then again, it's just going to tab, do the Spirit Lance in between each of them. And then you can see there the next guy runs out because he's got, only 20-25 seconds left. So he's running out to the corner. These guys are, about to be dead soon. So then he'll have some time to hit on the other ones. We will want warlocks to have their soul stones be created so that we can use them on healers if they, if they get the Shadow of Death debuff. But really the best thing you can do for this fight is practice playing this little game. Make sure you have your pet bar on your screen. Make sure it's big enough. Make sure you know where to run, when to run. There's also some classes that, like, when he uses Shadow of Death, he casts it. So there's a couple classes that can either, hunters can feign death, rogues can vanish, pallies can divine shield. So if you are one of those classes, you can actually negate this mechanic if you're fast enough by using like a stop cast macro and then use that other ability. Then he'll go to cast it. You won't be in a valid target. And again, we'll skip one of those Shadow of Deaths or one of the ghost kind of waves. The big thing to note for healers there is that the boss applies an incinerate that needs to be dispelled. It takes fire damage, so that's priority. Next boss is Gurtogg Bloodboil. So the boss starts kind of up here. We'll pull the boss over here to the right. The 3 tanks will be over here, and then the range and healers will be here. So we'll be using this little water pool here to indicate where people should run for this Bloodboil ability. So every 10 seconds, the people that are 5 furthest away will get this debuff, and it will stack. So we've got these Bloodboil groups here assigned, which are closely tied to actual raid groups, just for efficient healing, for Circle of Healing. So generally it's going to be like how we have it set up here. We would do Hunters first, Warlocks group second, Mage group third. The first group can start the fight in the water, but how it will go is we'll call these group numbers, because he's going to do it every 10 seconds. We'll say, okay, group 1 starts in, and then after, they get blood boiled, we'll say, okay, group 2 get in the water, and you guys will move from being standing in the water to moving back in with the rest of the group. So it'll go group 1, we'll start it, then group 2, then group 3, and then group 1 again, and then after that we'll all spread out. So he's got 2 phases. The first one is just the tanks have to worry about these debuffs that they'll get that reduces their armor, and he also does like a disorient. But he's in that phase for 60 seconds and then moves into phase 2, where he'll apply this Fell Rage to somebody. It pretty much makes them big. It makes them be the only player that the boss attacks. But they also spew this poison damage within like only a 5-yard range. So that's why after this, after group 1 takes the second blood boil, then we all spread out, because he makes, he's going to make the transition. Somebody, a random player, is going to get hit by Fell Rage, and they're instantly going to spew all this extra damage that is avoidable if we're spread out. So all of the healers will be healing this person who gets Fell Raged at that time, with their biggest single target heals, and we'll be able to bop them right off the start to give us some extra time there. So he'll go back and forth in between these 2 phases. Each different class has something that, not everyone has one, but some classes have an ability that they can use to help reduce the damage if they're the Fell Rage target. So just, general defensive abilities or forms that can be used. While he is in this Fell Rage, nobody can actually generate any threat. So the first phase is all about the 3 tanks being first, second, and third on his threat table. So everybody needs to make sure that they're not DPSing until we call for it, because we'll have to do a tank swap without taunting. So that would involve using things like MD and tanks like, me dual wielding, and because the tanks are gonna end up with such a number of these stacks that the boss won't be tankable by that player anymore. So we'll do some cheesy shit like trying to bubble, or just trying to be greedy with the amount of stacks that we have. But this threat is it doesn't wipe in between when he's swapping phases. So people aren't generating threat while he has somebody Fell in Rage that he's targeting. So I think we're still a little up in the air on exactly when we want to lust, but traditionally this would be like when people would lust, just to allow people to pop off without generating a ton of extra threat, which might cause a problem for when we switch back into phase 1. So here is on PTR, Migos gets Fell Enraged, uses evasion. So we're tanking it on that side. I'm generally not going to have good views of where the boil people are, but going back to like looking at pre-poll, the people standing in water here, like to start, again, here's the hunters hunters first in our current group setup. So those people would start in the water, whereas the rest of the group would just stack. Generally, we'll use like a raid marker to indicate the group, so you can just follow that raid marker. So if like Nardcal has a circle, then when you're called group 1, your circle group, and either way you need to know what group you're in, but helps show people moving in and out. Next boss is Reliquary of Souls. So this boss has 3 phases, and the boss has different abilities during each phase. So like before Pole, there's like a small gauntlet that we have to run through, and there's like a ramp leading down into Reliquary's room. We'll make sure that we're running in together and that we're not going down to the lower half of that ramp, because that's where the boss will engage, and we want to make sure that we have the tank topped off. We're not starting the boss fight with any of those ghosts from the gauntlet, because during the phase 1, healers aren't able to do any healing. So during phase 1, healers are just using like powered shield to reduce tank damage, but the boss will only attack the person who's closest. So the tanks will go in and out of pretty much standing under the boss during this time. Melee range should be attacking from max range. There are some abilities in here to dispel. Won't hit each and every single one of them, but like the general overview of the phases are here. So in between each of the phases, the boss will go back into, I don't even know how to refer to it. It goes back into this big cage looking thing, and a bunch of ghosts will kind of run in from the outside, and when they die, you'll get mana back if you're nearby them. So make sure you're aware that after phase 1 and phase 2, you're gonna get your mana back, so long as we're stacked up and killing those on top of the group. During phase 2, there's a gradual mana drain that takes place that reduces your max mana. The big thing for this one is that we have to be aware of kicks, and then the boss returns 50% of all damage dealt. So bursty classes just need to be careful of how, like, if you're casting another spell before you get topped off. We want to make sure that we're kicking the Spirit Shock ability, so we'll want to make sure we have Cursed Tongues on the boss, but we'll need to make sure that we kick the Spirit Shock so it doesn't hit and disorient the main tank. But then we do not want to be kicking this Deaden ability that the boss casts, because what it does is the person that's affected by it, like if it gets applied to the tank, it would increase their damage taken by 100%, but I'll be tanking it and spell reflecting, so that debuff will go into the boss, and the boss will take increased damage. So it casts a little less frequently, but this gives us a nice little DPS boost, similar to like holding the Magtheridon beams. So moving into phase 3, there's again, boss will go into the little deal, and ghosts will come out and we'll get full mana. The last phase is the anger phase. Really just the entire raid is gradually taking increased damage over time. So this Aura of Anger is deals 100 damage, and then it increases every 3 seconds. So the overall raid damage is going to go up with time. So it's really just a race to kill the boss. The only thing to really worry about here is there's just going to be this spite ability that is applied to 3 random members, but generally, like, that's between the tank getting hit and this damage, like, the raid-wide damage is pretty low. So some groups will even, like, have their healers DPS during the first, like, 10 to 20 seconds of this phase, with the expectation that the amount of damage is so low that you can just deal extra damage to the boss, and shorten the duration of the phase. The big thing here, and really during the entire fight, is to make sure you do not pull threat at any time. During phase 3, he's got this seethe ability. So pretty much if there's any need for a taunt or target switch, the boss gets a huge bonus to attack speed and does increase damage, and the raid takes a 10-second debuff, increasing your threat gen for by 200% for 10 seconds. So really that's, slippery slope, similar to like how on Archimon, if somebody dies, then it just causes this chain reaction of, oh, now somebody else pulls threat, and now we just wiped on, what really we like pretty much already had the fight done, because it's just surviving or like beating the timer at that point. For Shaman Healer, it's best to mana tide during phase 2 when people are getting their reduced mana. And again, just big focus on making sure that we start the fight correctly. If we can walk into this fight while like having like throwing a power word shield on the tank early and letting the weakened soul debuff kind of tick down a little bit at first, that'll reduce the need for any tank swap, even though the phase generally should be pretty easy. Pretty much all I had here was showing the Spirit Shock casts. So again, generally we're just going to be able to be stacked to make sure Permanent's bouncing around, Chain Heals bouncing in between players. Next boss is Mother Shahraz. So this is the Shadow Resist boss, where we're indexing on wearing 244 Shadow Resist. This pushes unresisted shadow damage hits off the table. You're going to want to make sure that you have a little bit more health. So focus stam pieces if in slots where you may not have any stamina on that piece. The big thing here is that the boss is going to be using these different beam types, and she'll swap them around and cast them a few times, and they each do a different thing. We'll be positioned in a way that for the sinister beam that does the knock-up, that will kind of hit our head on something and not take that fall damage. But we'll have, generally this view here shows when we tank the boss in this position where the fatal attractions can go. So what that is 3 people would be teleported somewhere, so to one of these 3 locations, and they'll be chained together, and the idea is that you'll take 3k shadow damage per second until you are able to break the chain in between the players by running 25 yards away. So essentially you just want to make sure that you're running away from somebody. If you're on a wall or get positioned on a wall, you want to make sure you're just running like pretty much perpendicular to that, assuming the others are running away from you. Don't just stand still, and make sure that you've got an idea of like be quick. Don't wait for somebody else to make 2 steps forward before you start moving in a direction. The boss also has these auras where your damage will be reduced, so at times your main school, you may deal 25% less damage, and it may be useful for you to switch to using a different school. The boss does this Saber Lash Cleave ability that's going to hit the main tank as well as the 2 off tanks, so we'll not be using any Shadow Resist gear, but we will continue to get hit by the Shadow, like the beams. So the main tank takes most of the damage, whereas the off tanks are taking a little bit. But the big thing is that like a sinful beam chain, while the main tank is taking normal attacks plus saber lash, like the damage on the main tank can be extremely spiky. Second to last boss is Illidari Council. So this is the council fight of tier 6. So again, this pull is really important because we want to get certain mobs away from each other. Similar to High King, we'll have a mage tank, but then not only is this Nethermancer involved, but there is a priest, a paladin, and then a rogue as well. So I've got them marked here on this like map view, and have the kind of the main things to watch out for with the marks here as well. And then the way this whole kind of sheet is set up is that if you want to look at each of the bosses or the mob's abilities in detail, they are there, but generally like most of the concise view is, and like main things to know are here on the left. So the main target that everybody is going to be attacking is this paladin, Gathios. We're going to pull him as well as the rogue off to the side here, and when possible, we're going to stack them up. All 4 of the mobs in the fight share a health pool, so there may be times where you might be attacking a different target, but know that you're still contributing. I'll go through in order of Gathios first, and then the rogue, and then the others. We have some assignments here for people that will be assigned to certain targets, but generally the raid will be attacking Gathios unless your name is listed here. So he has, again, if you look to the right, he's got like a couple different auras. He'll do a consecration, so we'll be wiggling the boss kind of back and forth over here out of the consecration, and then depending on what aura he has up, you casters may want to switch to the Nethermancer mob, so the mage, because he's going to be, even though these auras will hit the other mobs, the idea is that we're going to pull the mage outside of that range for the aura and away from the group. So with the general range being over here, you guys should be able to kind of turn, take a few steps, and attack the mage while Gathios has this chromatic resistance aura up, which increases his resistance in all schools of magic by 250. So general DPS, like when you can cleave between skull and diamond. Otherwise, when that aura is up, casters will want to switch. The rogue will be running around and vanishing, kind of like Moros. He'll put a deadly poison on people, which hits for like 1k every 4 seconds, and then he'll use this envenom ability to do a bunch of damage. So we've got healers watching out for that, but he's kind of just going to be spending some of the fight stealth running around poisoning people. for up to 30 seconds at a time. So whereas we can get kind of double damage on the combined health pool while they're stacked, he will be kind of he will be vanishing and doing his bullshit, and then Barely will be kind of picking him up and dragging him back over to Gathios to allow us to cleave and do more damage to the health pool. For the Nethermancer Zerevor, we're going to have it's just a standard mage tank target. The mage, which we've got currently assigned Gang here, will spell steal and then attack him. He does this arcane bolt, as you can see over here, but then he also does this flame strike and blizzard randomly, unlimited range to different areas of the room. So, you know, we're gonna have the mage kind of pulled off over here to the left. We're gonna have Gathios and Veros kind of pulled over here to the right at the start, and then Malanda pulled back closer to the door back here. So, you know, not only will we have to look out for the consecration for the melee on Gathios, but range will have to be wiggling around to watch out for that flame strike, and the blizzard as well, which both last for 12 seconds. So it's important that even though you need to move around for the fight, that you're not getting too close to Zerevor, because he'll do an arcane explosion if you get within 10 yards. The mage tank is worrying about spell stealing his dampen magic debuffs or buffs so that he can continue to mage tank him and take these arcane bolts. But he's also going to be worrying about being highest on threat as well. So the only other one here to worry about, besides Dubin putting, at least as we have signed here, putting Cursed Tongues on the mage, is Malanda will use a few abilities to try to heal all of the other ones, all the other mobs in the fight. So we've got this will probably just be Migos and unmute as of right now, but we'll have kind of redundant kicks set up on the mob to kick the healing, the circle of healing that mob is going to cast. It will put up a reflective damage shield. It doesn't stop the kicks, but if you continue to attack the mob, you know, you'll get 50% of your damage back. This fight is similar to, similar to High King, is really all about the pull and getting these mobs positioned correctly and making sure that you're moving out of any source of damage that you can take just by standing still, and making sure you're getting maximum damage output by attacking the right mob kind of at the right time, as I mentioned earlier with the chromatic resistance aura. So here is a video showing at least the flame strike and some loose positioning, and showing Veros kind of running around and their paladin tank picking it up. We're not going to use this exact positioning, but just general idea of where we're going to be focusing with the raid in the middle. There's going to be flame strikes and blizzards kind of spread throughout, and then the Gathios is kind of going to be moved back and forth over here on the right side. So again, big thing is to not be near the mage and know which target to attack. Anything that I might have missed or misspoke on for the folks that are in Discord? Again, we're going to have a separate video for Illidan specifically, since the fight is a little bit longer. But I want to make sure I covered everything here. Some of this will be kind of subject to change, as we may adjust our strategies based on what we see on live. about 12 to 14 of us did the first five bosses on the PTR. So there's a lot of that influenced here, but there may be something new that we learn and switch some of this around. I'd like some gamers in the chat to throw in some magical keywords for us to validate that people watch the video. Last time I think it was charcoal chinchilla butt plug. Okay, we'll make this one. Let's see. Saffron, Illidari. What was the other funny? Illidari Storm Rage. Saffron, Illidari Storm Rage. Hit that in my DMs if you enjoyed the content. Give me a like and a thumbs up. It really help us out. Hopefully this was concise enough. But again, this spreadsheet is really our source of truth. Anything you saw here could change, but this is where we'll be updating our strategies. Adding new or updating healing assignments, and providing any extra level of detail that we might see necessary.